So on this end, we are largely seeing patients who are involved in HIV prevention studies.
Dr. Salim Abdool Karim is a South African epidemiologist and virologist, best known for his groundbreaking research on HIV and AIDS. He founded one of the world's most advanced centers tackling the virus. This clinic in the heart of Durban is where the center began. It serves people living with HIV/AIDS and offers preventative education and resources to the local community. A US government decision to defund the majority of its foreign aid programs means many centers like this are under threat and struggling to make up the budget shortfall.
I came across a number that made my jaw drop. It was an assessment from the Tutu Center, a prediction that more than 500,000 people could die of HIV and AIDS related illness over the next decade given these cuts. That's ominous. That's scary. Does that make you think that all of this that you built up and achieved can be squandered by these external forces that we saw from the Trump administration?
There is no question that these funding cuts in the US have had an enormous effect. But that's not the end for us. We will never succumb, and we will never close down or be in a situation where we are no longer able to do what we want to do, because we will survive. We are in a country that has learned to survive despite adversity. So adversity for us is just a challenge to be overcome. And that's exactly what we are doing. We are now looking for new grants, new opportunities, finding new collaborations. In fact, the funding cuts from the US has opened a whole new world to us, that we are now working with scientists across countries we would not normally have reached out to. And that's because we recognized the importance of working with many, many others. We know there are great scientists in the US, and we'll continue working with them. But we know that the US government is an unreliable partner.
20 years ago, bad policies, superstition, and pseudoscience accelerated an explosion of new HIV/AIDS cases in South Africa. That changed when experts like Salim Abdool Karim and his equally accomplished wife Qureisha, with the help of US funding, turned the tide against the disease. Over time, CAPRISA became a global hub at the cutting edge of HIV/AIDS treatment and prevention. Further out of downtown Durban, at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, stands its newer, state-of-the-art research facility. It's here that the man they call Prof and his team are working to better understand how HIV/AIDS works and developing new life-saving treatments. All of this is now at risk. On this episode of the InnerView, I'll learn more about Dr. Abdool Karim's work and how he aims to protect it from a world that seems to be increasingly hostile to science.
We first started doing research on HIV back in 1989 together, and I, before that, started doing HIV research in 1985. So this is a whole lifetime's work. Much of it has been built with funding from the United States and from Europe. And in building all of this, we wanted to ensure that South Africa, and indeed Africa, has a world-class research facility, doing groundbreaking research, addressing Africa's problems, finding solutions, and importantly, being able to do so at the highest standards of science, ensuring the rigor of what we're doing. All of that is now in serious jeopardy. It's in jeopardy because the US government made this a drastic step of cutting our funding with immediate effect. They didn't give us a chance to say, oh, we are changing our plans and so on. That would have given us an opportunity to redirect our efforts. But because it was so sudden, we have now lost 51% of our budget. It has meant that we've had to retrench some of our scientists, we're having to shut down some of our clinics. It is really sad to see the challenge that we face after all of the work that has been done.
So PEPFAR started by George W. Bush. Just give me an understanding of the numbers and the sort of impact on a year-by-year basis. That US money coming in did what? And it not being here now on every level, how do you try to fill that gap?
The US government has been incredibly generous. The US public has been incredibly generous, providing funding for research, for programs, for prevention, for treatment. PEPFAR has been the single biggest funder of the AIDS program in South Africa outside of our government. CAPRISA is a research organization, so we're not involved in providing services, and so we get no funding from PEPFAR. Our funding comes, as far as the US government is concerned, mainly from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. And the NIH is not really about providing aid or providing funding support. It's all about competitive grants. So our grants are submissions that we've made, competed against others, and those studies were considered the best, and so we were funded. The problem is now that the NIH is under pressure. Its budget is being cut. They are cutting back on several of their programs, particularly hard-hit programs that focus on diversity, inclusion, programs that focus on LGBT issues, and importantly, programs that have funded or that have looked at issues around HIV. And there we have seen huge cuts. So our funding, right now, we have lost about half of our entire budget has gone. And the way it was done is a problem, because what happened was that, we've ended many projects. And when you end a project, you have a time to scale it back, turn it off, and that usually takes a few months. And it gives us a chance to go and get other funding. In this instance, they just sent us an email, stop spending all money today. That was it. And that's not designed to illustrate a change in US government policy. That is specifically designed in order to show that they are in control. It is their power, and we are just pawns in their game.
Tell me a bit about that axe and how it's just slicing everything from everywhere right now.
The challenge comes about that there are multiple ways in which the US government is strangling research and AIDS activities in South Africa. It's not just one thing. So initially, the hit was on USAID. So first thing we did is lost our USAID grants, and several others did. Then we've lost our NIH grants. And now what's happening is that with the executive order that Trump has signed, which specifically targets South Africa, any funding that has anything to do with the US government coming to South Africa is now in jeopardy. Because of the overarching way in which that executive order was written, there's a lot of gray area, and institutions have to figure out how they want to interpret the gray area. Some are interpreting it as no funding to South Africa. Some are interpreting it as, being associated with South Africa at all is a problem. And so what we have is that several institutions are hesitant to be found to be defying that executive order. So they prefer just not to have anything to do with South Africa. That's the safe route. Now, that's very unfortunate, because it means that it's now not just US government funds that are in jeopardy, but all funds, because any institution being seen to be associated with South Africa, risks the wrath of the Trump administration. That's very unfortunate, because in essence, what we are seeing is a kind of extortion, that the Trump administration is saying, we're going to withhold your money. You don't dare do anything against us, whether it's on South Africa or whether it's on gay community, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you dare not challenge the Trump administration. Should you do that, know that you will face the wrath, as you've seen at Columbia University, as you've seen at Harvard University. The administration is going to come after you. That's the problem.
You still hold a position at Columbia.
That's correct.
Harvard has fought back somewhat against Trump. Columbia, not so much. Does that put you in an awkward position? They seem to have caved more than Harvard has. Is that accurate?
I'm actually quite deeply ashamed of Columbia University. As a professor at that university, I've been associated with Columbia for more than 25 years. It has been an institution that has been among the world's best. And to see how they capitulated with just not even a whimper, they just gave in. That's really sad. And that capitulation has seen them actually collaborate with the Trump administration, even informing ICE about students that were involved in the protests. That's very sad. To see the leadership do that sell, what in South Africa during the apartheid era, we call them sellouts. They sold out. And so it needed strong institutions like Harvard to actually say, no, we won't capitulate. We will stand our ground. And of course, institutions must negotiate, as Harvard is doing, as Columbia is doing. But you negotiate from a position of strength. You don't capitulate and then say, I'll negotiate. You maintain your position of strength. You show that you have the power to resist, and then you negotiate. And I also hold an adjunct professorial position at Harvard, and I've seen how the two institutions have come out of this over the last several months. At Columbia, it's a demoralized institution. There's a complete loss of confidence in the leadership of the organization. You can't rally people behind you in defeat. Whereas at Harvard, when I was there, I was actually in Boston at the time that the president announced that they were going to challenge the Trump administration. People rallied around the institution's leadership. In fact, when the dean hosted the meeting informing all the faculty about what Harvard was going to do, he got a standing ovation. That's what has happened at Harvard, is that the institution has rallied behind its leadership to take on the administration. What is sad for me is that institutions like Columbia have been willing to sacrifice their academic freedom. They've been willing to accept that they should be told what they should teach, who they should employ, which students they should have. And Columbia in particular has presented us with many challenges on making determinations on its international students. It has particularly chosen to capitulate to the Trump administration on that issue.
This table looks like it's big enough to add a few more people. Let me wave a magic wand and put Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Marco Rubio, who's now assumed, temporary leadership of USAID, maybe RFK Jr. Let me put them all here. And you have a moment to tell them one thing in a minute. What would you tell them?
The truth always comes up tops. No matter what disinformation, what lies they want to spread, and what they want to say that, there's genocide in South Africa. What are you talking about? It's such a blatant lie that even they have difficulty keeping a straight face. To me, the truth shall always prevail. And the importance of the truth, for me, is what the administration has failed to appreciate. They have worked on the basis that their lies and disinformation and propaganda will carry the day. And they write, it will carry the day, but only today. It will not carry the day tomorrow and the day after. So the truth will eventually reign.
You've spoken about institutionalized disinformation. You've written the book Standing Up for Science. You believe that science needs to be defended. To what end are they pushing institutionalized disinformation? Why do they want to do this, in your opinion? Why would they downstream want their people to be sick as a result of this?
In South Africa, we've seen state capture. We've seen how past President Jacob Zuma captured the state and used it for personal gain. In the US, we are seeing something not too different. We're seeing how all of the power and the might of the state is being used essentially to gain more power and to use that power for personal financial benefit. Whether it's in cryptocurrency, whether it's in corrupt activities, it doesn't matter. So all of those activities that we're seeing is about suppressing the truth and ensuring that the state is able to continue the accumulation of power. Now, what are the elements that we're seeing? Well, there are three groups that are particularly important in bringing out the truth: the media, the lawyers, and the academics, the intellectuals of our society. They will not stand for the lies and the disinformation. And what we are seeing is that almost every day there's some new disinformation coming out of the White House. I mean, just every day you get something new. If you take, in USAID, there were accusations that these were criminals and that the money, I mean, the one accusation was made by Musk that $50 million was being sent to Gaza for condoms. And when it was pointed out to him in the White House press conference that that's actually a lie, and that in truth $15 million was given to Gaza province in Mozambique for its AIDS control program, which includes condoms. And they asked him, will you correct what you said? Because what you said was a lie. And he says, yeah, he will make mistakes. And of course, he never corrected it. So lying is their modus operandi. And for that, that means they have to attack the media. So you're seeing how they're destroying Voice of America, NPR, how they are challenging, only the friendly faces on Fox News are being allowed access. And Associated Press has been banned from the White House. So there's an attack on the media, there's an attack on lawyers, how he has written and signed executive orders against law firms that support the Democratic Party, and how he has gone after universities, whether it's Columbia or whether it's the University of Pennsylvania or Harvard. He is systematically attacking these institutions because these are the truth sayers. And he needs the truth sayers to be in a state of fright, to be paralyzed so that they don't challenge what the state is putting out in terms of disinformation.
All of this is top-down, and granted, there's evidence, abundant evidence of this happening in the US and elsewhere as well, right? So leadership, setting a narrative, manufacturing consent. During the pandemic, there seemed to be something else also going on, which is a bit more bottom-up and maybe a bit more insidious. So as somebody who was almost like the Dr. Fauci of South Africa on TV every day talking about COVID and tackling the pandemic, it seems as if, and you can disagree with me if you believe this is the wrong analysis, it seems as if from the time of COVID, we have never seen a more ripe time for people to have disdain for experts. Actually being this virologist, epidemiologist, the more titles I add, the more certificates I add here, the less they trust you. What drives that? What do you think created that?
There's been a superb study undertaken by the Wellcome Trust of 23 countries, and that study shows repeatedly in almost every country, doctors are the most trusted for advice. That when you want to hear the truth about medicine, go to your doctor. That's who they will trust. But what they have found in addition is that there is a small group of individuals that are deliberately undermining that trust. And what we are seeing is that that group is growing. And principally, the challenge that we face as scientists, as doctors, is that we explain the world in terms of, here's this virus, this is what it's doing, this is the illness that it's causing, this is how your body is reacting, these are the vaccines and how they react. We don't answer people's most important question. And that question we cannot answer, because that question is about who made me sick. And that's what people want to know. And so they love conspiracy theories. They love to get this idea that there's some powerful person that's deliberately making them sick because that helps them understand the world. They don't want to know just how. They want to know who. They need somebody to blame. And of course, Bill Gates, being one of the richest people in the world, is a clear target, because it's plausible that Bill Gates would want to do all of this. So what we have seen is there's a whole new reality that people are creating for themselves that helps them deal with the world, because they now understand who is making them sick. And that instinct that we have to blame somebody and to punish them for it is important. So, do scientists matter? That's your question. And the answer to that...
Well, do they still matter, given the poison that's been spread?
To me, the most clear evidence that scientists matter was who was the #1 enemy for Trump. It was Fauci. Fauci was his target. He would try everything he could to destroy Fauci. Fauci is nothing more than a scientist. He's just a doctor, a scientist. No political ambition, no political office. Why was he a threat? He was a threat because he spoke with authority, he spoke with clarity, and he provided people with the facts. And that countered all of the nonsense that was being promoted by the Trump administration. Don't wear masks, or use ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine.
Okay, and sorry to interrupt you, but then again, forget Trump for a second.
Yeah.
But I saw a comedian on Joe Rogan who said that Fauci doesn't know what he's talking about and this is what you need to do. That person on Joe Rogan got 300 million views.
Yeah.
Nobody's watching Fauci. Again, to my question, before I know I'm sort of belaboring the point a little bit, I just want to hold on to it for one more minute.
Yeah.
Is that, does it distress you? Does it dishearten you that the way narratives are created, it seems as if the cat's out the bag, it's very difficult to get trust back again?
I think what we have seen is an assault on science. And that assault on science has taken its toll. We now are in a situation where science is less believed than in most of the history that I'm aware of. And we need to rebuild that. We need to stand up for science. Every one of us needs to be an ambassador for science to promote it. The challenge we have is that there are individuals who have created a reality where the more you tell them about science, the more they think that science is a conspiracy. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy on their part. And those people are very hard to convince. They are very hard to... The more you try to convince them, the more convinced they are that they are right. And that challenge, we as scientists haven't been able to rise up to. We haven't figured out what it's going to take to illustrate to those individuals that actually science still has something to offer. And I believe that that's going to be our challenge for the next decade.
Prof's office is decorated with newspaper clippings and awards that speak to his team's incredible gains against HIV. With the Trump administration's arguably vindictive slashing of aid, predictions are dire. Hundreds of thousands could die. But in this age of uncertainty, where the scientists are deemed the amateurs and the talking heads the experts, one thing is clear. This man, a real expert, is up for the fight.